So one day I ran outside and saw a watermelon, so I ran to it. I picked it up and then ran it back to my house to open it up the only way I knew how, with rubber bands. I put some rubber bands on it and then I got a sheet for when it breaks. And then I continued placing rubber bands on it with the help of my brother, and it was starting to actually work. I kept doing it, and then my brother drew a face on it.
Henry!
And then we just kept going until eventually we ran out of good rubber bands. So I was left with no choice but to run out in the rain, get in my car, and drive to Walmart. I got there, got my rubber bands, and then headed back home to get back to placing them. And eventually I could even see the indentation in the watermelon. And then I actually predicted it.
It's gonna bust.
When?
Any second.
Oh, God.
I just know it.
Instant replay. And it left this wad of rubber bands, like for me to turn it into a rubber band ball, part 2. Part 2, putting rubber bands on a watermelon. So it exploded and left us with this wad of rubber bands. So I decided to turn it into a rubber band ball with all the leftover rubber bands. I began by making the wad a lot neater, and I discovered this.
There's watermelon inside this.
So I did my best to get it out and then kept making it neater, and then eventually started placing actual rubber bands on it. And after a while, I took a break to go shoot some hoops with it. And let's just say it's not a basketball, and I ended up breaking my backboard more than it was already. And then I waited till the next day at like 2 in the morning to start trying to place more rubber bands on it. I finished my pile and started placing another bag, and eventually I was down to the last one. And to be honest, it was a lot of time for very little difference, but I got another bag anyway and started placing them. I finished it up and I had a ball, I guess. Let me know if I should even keep doing this. So one day I ordered some heavy-duty water repellent to try and waterproof some things. It said it required 24 hours to dry, and I tried without letting it dry, and yeah. So I got a bunch of random stuff and started waterproofing. First with these shoes so I could run on water. Then this cardboard, then this paper, and then this random hat I found. And also this shirt, which would be great for rainy days. Then I let it all dry and came back the next day. And the cardboard kind of worked because the spray side was way more dry than the other side. And the paper also worked surprisingly well. Pretty dry. Then I put the hat on and it kind of worked. And then I put on the shirt, which actually worked really well. The water ran right off it. Then I took the shoes on down to the creek, put them on, and tried to run. And it failed, so I walked back sad, and then failed at skipping a rock. So one day I got a comment that said to Flex Seal an egg and try to break it. So I gave it a coat of Flex Seal, and then left and came back later to give it another coat. After that I let it dry, and then came back and tested it. And it didn't hold up. So then I had the idea to try a pumpkin, so I bought one at Walmart, and then gave it a nice coat of Flex Seal. And then I gave it another one on the bottom after it was dry. And then I tested it, hitting it up against stuff, and it was pretty durable. So I threw it, and it held up. So I threw it again, and again, and it finally cracked. Then I threw it into the garden to try and grow a pumpkin patch. Part 3 of making a rubber band ball. So this watermelon exploded and left us with this wad of rubber bands. So I turned it into this actual rubber band ball, and now we're here and I'm out of rubber bands, so I went to Walmart. I got some rubber bands and then went home and emptied them out and opened up a bag. And got busy. But after a little bit I left and then came back the next day. And finished off the pile. And then I dumped out 2 more bags and started placing them. But I got bored and ended up leaving and coming back again the next day to finish it all off. I placed rubber bands forever, and then I went outside to test it out on my broken hoop. Yeah, it was hard to play with, but it bounced really high. Here's it next to a basketball. Yeah. After that, I went back inside to finish off the pile, and then I dumped out another 2 bags and started placing rubber bands for what felt like an eternity. And I was finally down to the last bag. I put them all on, and I was done. And it's pretty big, but it's going to take like 1 million likes for me to keep going. So one day someone commented to do the thing that made me famous, which was probably floating down the creek on random stuff. So I went to Walmart and got the stuff to make a raft. You know, noodles, cardboard, and tape. And then I went home to start building it. I lined up all the noodles and then taped them all together with lots of tape. And then flipped it over and taped on that side. And after that I taped on a piece of cardboard and I was done. So I walked it on out to the creek, took it out to my launching point, and tried to sit on it, but it wouldn't go. So I laid on it, and it went. And I guess all I had to do was attribute my weight. I went on under the bridge, and eventually I switched to laying on my back. And I just kept on rowing on what was basically an air mattress until I was gone forever. No, I'm kidding, I came back. So one day it was raining, but that wasn't going to stop me from going outside. So I got in my hamster ball and let it air up. Yeah, it took a second. But when it was done, I took off in the hamster ball. I ran through puddles and didn't even get wet. I also jumped in them and rolled in them. I was basically indestructible, and I ran around completely protected from the forces of nature until I fell. And then I ran off and started rolling a lot. For some reason, I don't know. And my hamster ball got dirty, so my brother hosed it off. But then I just ran back into a puddle and fell again. The end. So one day I went to Walmart and got tinfoil to make a giant tinfoil ball like the ones I've seen people making on TikTok. I started with a small one and then began wrapping more and more tinfoil around it. And it looked pretty cool, like an asteroid. And I just kept wrapping it, and like a snowball, it just kept getting bigger. I continued to wrap it for quite a while, and it was beginning to look pretty cool. I finished it up, and then I took it outside to play basketball with it on my jankety hoop. And it stuck in the hoop, but I got it out and started playing with it. And not gonna lie, I was doing pretty good with it. I even made this long shot. Then I got it down, and while I was walking back, I shot from behind and made it. Yeah. And then it came down like a giant asteroid. So one day I filled a giant hamster ball up with water and busted the zipper, and all the water came out. Full vid is on my YouTube, but anyway, now I want to see if my hamster ball still works so I can put a hoverboard in it and ride in it. So I fixed the zipper and then aired it up. I wanted to see if it would still hold its shape after having all that water in it. And after it was all aired up, it still did. So I pushed it over a bush and out to the yard to mess with it. I kicked it, and then I pushed it, and then I jumped on it, and then I jumped on it again. And after that, I deflated it and then got in it with my hoverboard to air up. And after a little bit, it was done filling up. So I picked up my hoverboard, walked out to the street, set it down, and got on. And it worked. I spun around, and I also drove to the hill part to go down it. And I fell. But I kept going. And then I turned around and went back up and fell again multiple times. And then I headed home and really fell. So I got out.
That was cool.
And drove off. Part 4 of making a rubber band ball. So this watermelon exploded and left us with this wad of rubber bands, and I've been adding a lot of rubber bands to it. And I said it would take 1 million likes for me to keep going, and it got 4 million. So I went to Walmart, got more rubber bands, and then left, went home, set them down, and opened them up. And then the next day I got on that rubber band grind, placing the entire pile on the ball. And when I was done, I left and came back again later to place another bag on. And once I finished that ball, it was pretty big, like the size of my head. I weighed it, and it weighed 5 pounds. And it also bounced pretty high, and made a decent basketball for my broken hoop. And after that, my brother wanted to play some bands, so I let him. But he gave up, and I ended up having to finish his pile off. And after that, I only had one more big pile left, so I dumped it all out and started placing them. I finished it up, and then started on the bag of thicker rubber bands. And now I'm out. This sucked a lot, and since the last post got like 4 million likes, it's going to take like 5 million likes now for me to keep going. So one day I decided to see how much a pawn shop would give me for my rubber band ball. So I got in my car and drove out to one, but it was closed for another 30 minutes. So I waited, ate a burrito, and then went back in and said,
I got this rubber band ball.
Okay.
I want to sell for $200.
Why do you think it's worth $200?
I put a lot of time into it. It's a lot of rubber bands,
How many rubber bands are in there?
like 14 bags.
How many is in a bag?
I have no idea. But it weighs 6.5 pounds.
Wow, does it bounce? Wow, it bounces pretty good. Well, how old are you?
16.
You gotta be 18 before you can do anything with it.
and then he said he'd give me $100 for it if I counted all the rubber bands and had someone 18 sell it for me. So I thought about it and said,
200.
No, I can't go 200 on it, but it'd be worth just watching you count that many rubber bands for $100.
500.
I couldn't get $500 out of a rubber ball.
How much do you think you could sell this for?
$50.
I'm gonna have to walk.
All right. Appreciate you coming in.
So then I walked out with my rubber band ball, and I guess I'm just going to have to keep adding bands. Part 5 of making a giant rubber band ball. So I've been making this rubber band ball, and I ran out of rubber bands, so I went to Walmart. Got a bunch more rubber bands, and then I went home, dumped 2 bags out, put some gloves on so I didn't break my skin again, and started placing the bands. And then left and came back the next day to finish off the pile. It looked pretty good so far, and then I forgot to video placing a whole nother bag. But it looks like this, and then I dumped out all the colored rubber bands and started placing them all on the rubber band ball. And I was done, and it was almost the size of my head and weighed 8.2 pounds. And bounced pretty high. And also made a decent basketball, like if you want me to keep going. So one day I decided to take my 12.9 pound rubber band ball and see how high it would bounce off a building. But first in the street, and then in the hoop. And then I got a ladder and climbed up to the roof of my house with the ball to throw it off. I threw it off and it bounced pretty high and went into the yard. And then I tried to go up even higher to throw it off and just dropped the ball and almost took out my brother. And then I went down so I didn't fall off. I put the ball in my car and took it to a parking garage to throw it off that. I walked up there and tossed the ball off. Yeah, it bounced pretty high. And then I went back up all cinematic with the ball, ran around, and then I fell. But I got back up, took my ball to the edge, and bounced it off. And then celebrated. Full vid will be on my YouTube. Rubber band ball part 9. So a lot of people don't know that it started when this watermelon exploded and left me with this wad of rubber bands. And ever since then I've just been adding on to it, and this is the entire compilation up until now. And I needed more colored rubber bands, so I went to Walmart, but they were out. So I got gas and went to a different Walmart. But they were out too, so I went to another one and they finally had some. Then I went home, dumped out a bag, and then got busy placing the entire pile of rubber bands until I was done. And then I left and came back later. I dumped out the colored rubber bands and placed that entire pile. Then I found some more rubber bands in the floor, placed those, and then placed a bag of thicker rubber bands that I also found in the floor. And I was done. It now weighs 14.7 pounds, is the size of my head, and bounces pretty high. And it's also bigger than a basketball, like if you want me to keep going. So I've been making this giant rubber band ball, and to be honest, at this point I'll probably never stop. So I went to Walmart, got a bunch more rubber bands, then left, went home, dumped out all the colored rubber bands, and began placing them. Until I was done with the entire pile, which took a while. But I did it, then took a break and came back later to start on the pile of normal rubber bands. And I placed that entire pile covering all the colored rubber bands. So sad. Then took another break, came back and dumped out all the thicker rubber bands and began placing them until I was out. And the ball now weighs 19.2 pounds and is a lot harder to throw and way harder to make a basket with. Yeah, it's pretty big, so like if you want me to keep going. So one day I took a Power Wheels to a fast food place. I got in and drove on up after a lot of struggle. And then I pressed the button to order my food.
I would like a corn dog and a large tot. All right, thank you.
Then a car drove by and said,
500. Thank you. My daddy bought it.
I then sat there, waved at the camera, then played with all the car's buttons. And eventually my food came.
A corn dog and then a large tot.
Yep.
All
All right, thank you.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Then I drove away with my food, and I think this is going to become my new go-to vehicle. And it was a good corn dog. So one day I ordered a giant water balloon. I tried to figure out how I was going to fill it up, and then I thought, rubber bands. And then I began filling it up until eventually it started to leak. And I tried to fix it, but failed, so I just had my brother hold it while I jumped.
No.
Yeah, pretty cool. Now here's the slow-mo. Wow. And it was broken. Like if I should do it again. So I've been making this giant rubber band ball, and I'm just going to keep adding rubber bands every time Walmart restocks. So I went there, got a few more bags of colored rubber bands, then went home and started with the 2 bags I ordered on Amazon. I placed the entire pile until you couldn't see a colored rubber band in sight. And then I left and came back later to place the colored rubber bands I got at Walmart. And I placed it until I was done. It's huge and now weighs almost 26 pounds, is super hard to throw and really hard to catch, but I can still make a basket with it and even stand on it now. Well, kinda. Like if you think I should keep going. So one day someone commented to Flex Seal my broken basketball goal that's missing a lot of pieces. So I bought Flex Seal, duct tape, and a new basketball, and then went home and duct taped the entire backboard so I'd have a base for the Flex Seal. And then I Flex Sealed the entire thing on both sides until I was done, and then I came back the next day to see if it was dry. And it was, so I tested it. And it held up pretty good and took all the balls with ease. And then I threw it in the woods on accident, got it, and then kept on shooting. And I'd say it was a success because nothing would break it. And it looks pretty good. Like if you think I should Flex Seal something else. So one day I got this comment that said to throw my rubber band ball off a hill, so I put it in my car and drove on out to a hill. I got out and carried it on up the hill, which was hard because it weighs 30 pounds, and I got to the top and threw it off. And it bounced and bounced and then started rolling, and it started bouncing again towards the bottom and went on out into the parking lot and just kept on going. And eventually I had to chase after it and jump over a fence, and I had it. And then we went back up the hill to try it again from this angle. And it went on down pretty steady, and then it looked like it was going to hit my car. And I got kind of nervous, so I started to chase after it. But it barely missed it and just went on out into the field. So as you know, I have this giant rubber band ball, but now I want to make a little rubber band ball to show you how. I first wadded up a clump of bands and then wrapped them around each other until I had this. And then I started doubling up bands and adding them to the clump for a while until I had this. And after that, I just kept on going until I got to this. And it's pretty neat and bouncy. I went on for quite a while after this until it looked like this. And it's pretty cool and weighs a lot less than my other one, weighing 0, and this one weighing 28. And it's not even close to the size of my head. Here's me throwing the big one, and now here's me throwing the small one. Now a basket with the small one, a basket with the big one, eventually. And throwing the big one and throwing the small one. I had to run after it. Yeah, they're both pretty cool. So one day I went to Walmart, got a cart, and got 4 bottles of Diet Coke to try the old Diet Coke Mentos rocket trend that I could never really do. And grabbed 4 packs of Mentos. And then I went home. I taped the Mentos in the bottles, and on the first try, I dropped them.
Ow!
So I got a new bottle and placed the Mentos successfully in it. And then I proceeded to shake it, and then throw it up in the air.
3, 2, 1, yeah. Oh crap.
It made a cool spiral.
It's not what I wanted.
So I went again. I shook the bottle up, and then I threw it.
Ready? Okay. Oh crap.
And it launched all the way to the upstairs window.
Oh my god.
But the next one failed.
Oh.
So I dumped the remaining Diet Coke into one bottle, threw it up, and it did nothing. So one day I grabbed my cardboard car and my hoverboard. I put them both in my car and then headed to Sonic drive-thru. I got there, got out, and got my hoverboard and my cardboard. And then put it on and headed over to order food.
I'm ready.
I rolled up in my cardboard car like a boss. And then I pressed the button. And eventually someone answered.
Sonic, my name's Hunter. Be my absolute honor. Take orders today.
Alright, I would like a breakfast burrito and a medium strawberry limeade.
Set a breakfast. All right, is this all complete orders today?
Yep.
Have a super amazing day.
Alright, you too.
And then I waited around my box for my food. And then it said it's on its way.
That'll be all. Alright, thank you.
I got my food and then drove off back to my car. So this is part 18 of making this giant rubber band ball, and I'm just going to keep going. So I went to Walmart and got like 9 packs of colored rubber bands, then left, went home, and dumped them all out into a giant pile, and got busy placing them. And I placed the entire pile, which took quite a while. And then I left and took a break and came back later with this bag. I dumped it out and placed that entire pile. And eventually I was done. And it weighs a lot. It's bigger than my head. It's pretty hard to make a basket with. I can stand on it and really hard to throw. Like if you think I should keep going. So I'm now to part 20 of this, which is crazy. And I'm just going to keep going. So I went to Walmart and bought all the colored rubber bands they had. Then went home and dumped them all out into a pile. And then I got busy placing them until I was done with that pile. Then I got the 2 packs I ordered, dumped them all out into a pile, and began placing them until a ball was finished. And it now weighs an astounding 42 pounds. It is very hard to bounce now, and its basketball days are just over. But I am getting better at standing on it, so that's cool. Like if you want me to keep going. So one day I went to Walmart to get the stuff to make a cardboard treehouse. I got a bunch of tape and a bunch of cardboard, and then I went home to build. I cut one sheet and then folded it into half of a base. And then I added another sheet and taped them together. And then I added a final sheet and started taping down all the flaps. After that, I added a second level of cardboard and did my best to tape it and align it all properly. I then jumped in to tape the inside together, and then got out by crawling under it. I also taped the seam that connected the boxes all around it to better secure the 2 halves. And then I taped a sheet of cardboard on top of it for the floor. Then flipped it over and got in it to add more cardboard to the base. And after I did all that, I decided to lay down and take a break. And it was done and ready to be put in a tree, like for part 2. So one day I went to Walmart and got a bunch of poster board and a roll of Gorilla Tape. And then I headed home to build a giant paper airplane. I started out by making a smaller version to test the material out, and it flew pretty well. Then I got out 4 sheets of poster board and taped them all together with the Gorilla Tape. And it was already turning out better than I thought it would. I then flipped it back over and folded the plane in half. After that, I started making all the folds necessary to make a paper airplane. And it was kind of hard to work with a material like this, but by taping it all, I kind of managed. I folded it in half, and then I made the wings. And after that, I taped up all the seams and the bottom of the plane for extra support. And it was done and ready to be thrown off a bridge, like for part 2. So one day someone commented to use my waterproof spray on a cardboard boat. So I found this cardboard box and taped it up on all sides to seal it. Then I cut out a hole for me to sit in and then taped that. And then I started spraying all the waterproofing stuff. I sprayed it all around and on every single side until it was done. And then I let it sit overnight and came back the next day, put it in my brother's truck and took it on down to the creek. And when I put the box in the water, it was still dry. So I set it down, got in, and started rowing. And it was completely working. I went out under the bridge, and then further, and then just chilled for a second, and kept on rowing. This was probably one of the best cardboard boats I've ever made, and I just kept on rowing forever. So one day someone commented that I need to put more coats of Flex Seal on the egg. So I Flex Sealed another egg, and then put another coat on the other side. And after that, I let it dry, then put another coat on. And then put another coat on. And then put one last coat on. And it was done and seemed pretty sturdy, so I tested it from a waist-high drop, and it held up pretty well. So I went a little higher, and it seemed a little bit mushed in. So I threw it up in the air, and then it was like completely mushed in. So I just threw it up one more time for the heck of it, and it was crushed. So one day I decided to fill up a giant hamster ball with ball pit balls in it up with water. So I got in, let it air up, and then began filling it up with water. The water shocked me at first, and then I just let it fill up and stopped it before it got too heavy. I then laid in it for a second. It was pretty cool. And then I got up and went off, and fell pretty hard. And after that, I got up and fell again. But I went out, and then decided to lay down and put my face underwater. Then I just chilled in it. It's pretty nice. I walked around for a bit, went out into the yard, slid in the balls, and then did a cannonball. And after all that, I decided to get out. Let me know what else I should do with it. So one day I bought this giant slingshot to launch random stuff. I taped this side to the tree and then the other, and it was ready to launch. So I filled up a box of water balloons, put one in, and it launched pretty good. Then the next one hit a tree. Then I had my brother stand back and shot him in his direction and then almost hit him a few times. This one was right past him. And here's the first person. I put it in, pull it back, and launch it. Then I went to Walmart to get some pumpkins and try to launch them. I went home and it wasn't working very well. This was my best launch. So I got mad, got on the zip line, and threw it at a tree. Then took the broken pieces and tried to launch them, and they actually did pretty well. Here's another one. Then I had some little pumpkins I also tried, and almost hit my brother. Here it is from behind, flying in the air. And here's another first-person launch. Let me know what else I should try. So I'm now to part 25 of this giant rubber band ball, and everyone just wants more and more and more. So I ordered these new rubber bands on Amazon, and they were way too small. So I got sad, and then I went to Walmart and bought a bunch of colored rubber bands, and then went home. Then I, dumped them out into a pile and started placing them, which took longer than usual for some reason. But I finished, then took a break and came back later to place these other colored rubber bands I ordered. I placed that entire pile, and the ball kind of looks like Spider-Man now. And weighs 57 pounds. I took it downstairs and outside, then threw it and sat on it, and it's also way bigger than my head, and I can stand on it. So, if you want me to keep going. So one day I decided to take my giant water balloon and throw my rubber band ball on it to see if it would break it. I set it down in the yard, tied the zip tie and hose around it, and then let it fill up until it was all the way full. Then I took the hose out, sealed it again, and put the rubber band ball on it. And it just kind of rolled off at first, so I dropped it on it, and it stood up. So I threw it on it, and it busted. Here's a slow-mo. Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of damage. Let me know any other ideas you have. So it's now to part 28 of making this giant rubber band ball, and I ordered more rubber bands. I dumped them out and placed them. And when I was finished with that, I got out these garbage bag rubber bands that I ordered that are also pretty colorful. And then I placed another pile of those ones. And it now weighs 68 pounds. I took it downstairs, out to the yard, into the cul-de-sac, and look at it next to a basketball. Ordinary basketball and hoop, rubber band ball and hoop. Tossing basketball, tossing band ball. But I can stand on this one, if you want me to keep on going. So one day I went to Walmart, went to the As Seen on TV section, and got some flex tape. Then some duct tape and some cardboard. And I was going to make a cardboard car powered by my hoverboard. I got the flex tape out and started figuring out a design. I formed it into a box and cut the flaps off and tested that. After that, I cut out a head hole and tried to use the flex tape, but that stuff is hard to cut. I took a box, then put it on my box for support, and then I taped it all together with some duct tape too, because the flex seal was being annoying. Cut it all out, and then added some wings, and I was ready to ride. My brother also decided to make one, and we rode around together in cardboard. Yeah, it looked pretty cool, I guess. Us out in the streets in our cardboard boxes. Then we headed out to the road, and we were going to go to an old country road to race, like for part 2. So one day I decided to turn my brother's truck bed into a ball pit. First I taped up this hole, and then got all the ball pit balls from my hamster ball and dumped them out into the truck, until eventually it was done and ready to take down the road. I jumped in it, laid down, and then just chilled. Then I got a GoPro and we headed out. And it was pretty cool, just moving along through my neighborhood in a ball pit. Yeah, and I just chilled there. And then some almost came out, but I got them. I just sat there, moved some balls around, and we went all out through the neighborhood. And at one point it was pretty shaky, but for the most part, the ride was pretty chill, and I even laid down. Then we went back home, and I got out and threw my GoPro in. I put my hand in there and found it, and then we put all the balls back in the hamster ball. Like if we should do something else with all the ball pit balls. So one day I decided to take my giant 70-pound rubber band ball to an abandoned water park to throw it down a giant water slide. I walked around trying to figure out where the slide dropped off and figured out it dropped off right over there. So I went down there and make sure it was retrievable, and it seemed doable. So I got the rubber band ball, took it up a bunch of stairs, and it was ready to go. On down this old abandoned slide. But first I wanted to try out this little one. So my brother went down there to film, and I threw the ball. And it went pretty fast, so I kind of lost track, but it went all the way down and out. My brother picked it up, and then I was ready to send the big one down. And I pushed it off, and it went down pretty hard and was making a lot of noise. It went around the curve, and then I could see it going through the tunnels. It was going really fast and started making even more noise, so some people started yelling. But despite that, the ball prevailed on and went all the way out. And here's my brother's perspective. That was cool. And then I lugged my rubber band ball home. So it's now part 29 of this rubber band ball, and I guess I'm just going to keep going. I ordered another box of these thick rubber bands and put the whole pile on my ball. I then took a break and came back later to place all these colored rubber bands that are also supposed to be garbage bag rubber bands. I placed the entire pile, and it was done. And it's now 72 pounds. I rolled it downstairs, outside, and into the cul-de-sac. Here it is in comparison to my head, and here's me trying to throw it. And look, the basketball hoop fell over. But I can stand on it. And like if you want me to keep on going. So one day I got an air mattress, some cardboard, some tape, and I started making a cardboard boat. I started by taping one sheet of cardboard on the edge. And then I added another sheet on the end and taped it down. After that I added one last edge piece and taped it down all around. Then it was done. And I picked it up and put it in my brother's truck, and we headed down to the creek and carried it down to go test it.
Dude, let's just sail off right there.
I put it in the water, and then I got in and started rowing. And I rowed out decently far.
Dylan?
But any further, I was headed for a current, so I made my way back. And then we both got in to sail, like for part 2. So I've been making this rubber band ball for a long time, and it's now part 30. And I ordered another pack of these big rubber bands and placed the entire pile. And after I was done with that, I got the pile of even more of these big colored rubber bands than I did last time. And when I was done with that, the ball was looking pretty good at 76 pounds. I took it out to the street, picked it up, and threw it the best I could, and then tried again. And I ended up just laying on it and then standing on it. So, like, if you want me to keep on going.